Good morning, Principal Mrs. Harnoster. Good morning, teachers, assistant teachers, and all other staff, and a very warm greeting to all of you, the learners, the pupils of Parklands. You are the spirit and the energy of this wonderful school, and it is such a joy for me to be with you, to celebrate with you this morning. Many of you will know that I am Brendan Stones' dad. Hello, Brendan. And so you will all know that this school, and more especially each and every one of you, hold a very cherished place deep inside my heart. This morning, as Parkland celebrates Deaf Awareness, we're going to explore what does it mean to be deaf, and also look at the different types of deafness and the experiences of some deaf people, as well as people who have additional challenges above being deaf. We'll talk a bit about how do deaf people communicate, and we'll get some insight into the amazing world filled with wonder and opportunity that many people who are deaf or deafblind experience. So, who am I? Well, firstly, I am Brendan and my younger son Rory's dad, as well as the husband to Mercia, who is also a deaf person. I lost most of my hearing at birth through oxygen deprivation. For you learners, what does oxygen deprivation mean? Well, put simply, it means that I was born not breathing. The doctors had to help me to breathe again. And although I was deaf from birth, doctors did not pick this up until I was, can you believe it, 5 years old. 2 weeks before I turned 6 years old, I received my first pair of hearing aids, and only then was I able to learn how to speak using my voice, as well as how to read. While my parents were advised to send me to a school for the deaf, Delabutt School for the Deaf in Worcester in the Western Cape, my parents chose to send me to a mainstream hearing oral school, as they wanted to raise me orally, that is, using my voice, rather than using sign language, which is the first language, the primary mother tongue of people who are culturally deaf. I was the only deaf child at my school. When I finished school, I studied further at the University of Cape Town, finishing ultimately with a master's degree in religious studies, and later I studied journalism and media studies at Rose University in Makanda. After that, I was employed for 6 years at the National Institute for the Deaf in Worcester, where my tasks included designing training material in leadership and management for deaf people all over Africa. And I was privileged to have the opportunity to lead aspects of this training. And that took me to many interesting countries, such as Swaziland and to Ethiopia, and even some time in Bujumbura, which is the capital city of Burundi. I was also part of a team that led public awareness and sensitization training on deafness to professional people in diverse spheres, including the health and the correctional services, retirement homes, churches, and even bank managers. While in Worcester, I helped coach the deaf children of Delabutt School for the Deaf. How ironic is that? A school that I was going to be a pupil at, and then life has a funny way of turning things around and taking us back to our roots, so to speak. And I ended up coaching some of these children in athletics. And I also became actively involved in several sports for the deaf, both as a sportsman as well as an administrator. Among the highlights were competing at the first ever World Deaf Athletics Championships, which took place in a city called Izmir in Turkey, and then the 2009 Deaf Olympic Games, which took place in Taipei and in Taiwan, both times in the marathon. I was also privileged to have the opportunity to serve as the founding president of the South African Deaf Rugby Union. I served there for about 10 years, and then as team manager for the Deaf Rugby South African team in its first ever historic Deaf Rugby Test Series against the world champions Wales Deaf in a 2-test series which took place in Pretoria in 2015. And I'd like to show you the blazer that they awarded me for this. I think you can see that. There we are. It says Deaf Rugby Team Manager, the Protea green blazer, something that I will always, always cherish. Over the years, my hearing has become progressively worse. Now, people don't really understand why that is, because oxygen deprivation that causes hearing loss, sensory neural hearing loss is what the medical term is. You wouldn't really expect it to get, even with age, so rapidly and severely worse, but that is what happened with me. And 3 years ago, in 2018, in 2 years ago, in 2019, I acquired a cochlear implant for my left ear. And I want to show you what the cochlear implant looks like. Hope you can see it. There we go. This part over here is a magnet that goes over my ear, and it connects to something that was placed under my left ear. They made an incision just below the ear, and they put you can call it a magnet, into the skull. They had to drill something into a small little hole in my skull, and then they put a magnet there. And this is another magnet that connects to that magnet. And this thing goes over my left ear. Let me just put it back on. It's an amazing device. There we go. I can hear again. It's helped me to hear better and also to understand speech, because at the time that I received this cochlear implant, I had absolutely no perception, or I couldn't pick up any speech at all. 0 was the score. And now, 2 years later, with this cochlear implant, I have a roughly 75 to 80% picking up words. Isn't that amazing? It's an absolute miracle. You know, they talk about the 7 wonders of the world, and I reckon the cochlear implant and assistive devices for people who are deaf or have a vision impairment, also like myself, and I'll speak about that a bit later. These are the 8th wonders of the world. It gives you access to the spoken, visual in a way, and also the hearing world, sound and music. Isn't that amazing? Absolutely amazing. Without it, as I said, I cannot hear anything at all. I have absolutely not just speech. I have no perception of sound whatsoever in my left ear. But with this, I pick up so much more. In fact, right now it's better than my right ear. My right ear, I wear this ultra superpower hearing aid. It's called a Unitron Max. It's one of the most powerful hearing aids in the world. But the cochlear implant is actually even clearer and more powerful than my hearing aid at this stage. So the cochlea, what is the cochlea? The cochlea is a snail-shaped part of the inner ear. And as I said, I place a magnet over the part where the other magnet is implanted inside my ear. And this turns sound vibrations into electrical impulses or signals that travel along the auditory or the hearing nerve. And the brain is an amazing thing, but it translates these signals into sounds that the brain recognizes. And then we can hear music, speech, and communicate with other hearing people and the world around us. It's an absolute, incredible, miraculous technology. Now, as you can see, I wear glasses. I do have another pair of glasses that are clearer and you would likely be able to see my eyes. But because I am doing this presentation from my office and the sun is very bright, there's a big glare, I'm wearing my prescription darker glasses, which actually I wear most of the time these days, because my eyes are very sensitive to the bright glare of the sunlight. And also I see clearer and I can read much more clearly with these glasses. So why do I wear these glasses? Well, I first started wearing glasses when I was 12 years old. And because I was already wearing hearing aids at that stage, my parents felt that it would be best to delay having to wear glasses until it was absolutely critically needed. And I can appreciate that, because imagine being a child, you're children. Imagine now if you had to wear glasses and things behind your ears, and you're a small little boy and you're going to a mainstream school where children don't wear hearing aids. Children don't have these things. And children can be funny, as some of you may have experienced, and ask all sorts of interesting questions about it that can be quite a challenge for a child. And my parents didn't want to burden me with that extra burden until it was absolutely, absolutely needed. However, by the age of 12, even when sitting right at the front of the class, I could no longer read the writing on the board, and it was necessary for me to start adjusting to life as a dual sensory impaired person. What is my vision? What causes this vision loss? Well, the technical medical word for it is myopia. Put simply, this means I am short-sighted, very short-sighted. Myopia, it's actually a very common condition, not rare at all, where one can see objects near to one, most likely very clearly, but objects the further away they are, the more blurred they become, or even in fact invisible. You might not even be able to see them. Myopia happens when the shape of one's eyes causes the light rays to blend or refract incorrectly, focusing images in front of the retina instead of on the retina. So what is the retina? It's a very important thing. The retina is at the back of your eye, and it has light-sensitive cells called rods and cones. When you look at something, the light hits the retina, and the rods and the cones send electrical impulses or signals to the brain along the optic nerve. Now remember what I said about the cochlear implant, where it sends these electrical impulses and that helps you to hear. It's the same thing also with the retina. The brain uses these signals to interpret what you are seeing. But the problem is that when the retina starts to becoming weaker and more dysfunctional, then the ability to see clearly, you can't see as clearly anymore. So for most people with myopia, the vision loss stabilizes, or it stops getting worse in your 20s and early 30s. For some people, however, the vision does not stabilize and it continues to become progressively worse. So this is true for me. I have high myopia, which is when one's diopter reading is -6 or more. The diopter, what is the diopter? Well, this is the strength of the prescription, and it measures how strong the lenses need to be in order to try and correct your vision. But for some people, your vision cannot really be corrected. It can just be improved as far as possible, but it cannot, at some point, it cannot give you perfect vision. You will still not be able to see clearly, even with the best types of correction or best lenses and glasses that you could possibly imagine. You cannot see clearly. The higher the prescription, the worse one's eyesight is. And this is complicated by the fact that my myopia is progressive or degenerative, which means that over the years, it continuously gets worse. This form of myopia, this degenerative form of myopia, is actually very, very rare. And according to the World Health Organization, only 3% of the world's population are affected by degenerative myopia. And it is considered the leading cause of legal blindness, and I'll talk a bit more just now about legal blindness. In degenerative or progressive myopia, the retina and other layers at the back of the eye become so thin, worn away, that the cells in the retina start to die off slowly. This leads to atrophy or a wasting away or worsening of the retina, and with it a slow decline in central vision. So that's why also I don't see very well anymore, especially at night. It can also cause night blindness, very poor central vision, as well as, in my case, some of my periphery or side vision is also affected. I'm now legally blind, and with my best corrected vision, my glasses are what we call 20/200. Perfect sight is measured at 20/20. So with my glasses on, I can see at 20 meters what someone with perfect vision would be able to see from 200 meters away. And without my glasses on, although this was measured 3 years ago, so it may be a bit different now, but 3 years ago, without my glasses on, I was told I had 20/400 vision. So in other words, at 20 meters, when I'm standing 20 meters from something, someone with perfect vision would be able to see the same thing from 400 meters away. So that's pretty blind. As I live with a combination of both a profound hearing loss and a severe vision impairment, I am what is called deafblind. It is also referred to as a dual sensory loss or a multisensory impairment. Deafblindness is multifaceted. There are many layers and aspects to being deafblind. It's not just one thing. One can't say, oh, you are deafblind, this is what it is. There are many layers and ways of understanding it and communicating and of being as a deafblind person. Many people may have this mistake of saying, you're deaf, so how can you use your voice? You're deaf. How can you hear anything? People have the assumption that deafness means you cannot hear anything. As you are experiencing with me, hopefully this morning, that's not necessarily true. And in most cases, it isn't true. And the same thing applies to people who are deafblind. Most deafblind people can see something, can hear something. They have some usable degree of vision or hearing remaining. But then some people are completely, utterly, totally deaf, but they do have some degree of useful vision, while others are completely, totally, utterly blind. They don't even have a perception of light or darkness, but they do have some residual or leftover hearing. Some people communicate with sign language, others through the medium of touch. They call it tactile communication. While others like me, especially if they do get good use from assistive devices like cochlear implants, hearing aids, and other devices which I'll talk about a bit later, that help them to access sound and the world around them, we use our voice to communicate. Many deafblind people use a cane to navigate. Let me show you the cane that I have. See, it's all wrapped up, and how's it going now? Just bear with me. There. It's a bit stuck. These things happen. But anyway, you get an idea. There we go. Now this is the white cane, but for deafblind people, there we go. It's unwrapped now. There we go. And for deafblind people, right at the bottom, you would have a red tape to show that you are deafblind. This completely white cane is for blind people. Deafblind people would have a red tape at the end of it, just to show that you are also hearing impaired. I don't yet have the red tape on it, but that is what would signify that one has both a hearing and a vision impairment. Some people make use of a guide dog, and I'm sure that you've seen some vision impaired people or blind people walking around with a dog that has a special lead on it. And they may even have something that they're dressed in that says that they're a service dog or a working dog. So that's a guide dog. Now, I don't have a guide dog. We do have a dog, but it's not a guide dog. It's just a very friendly, happy dog, and his name is Hope. He's a rescue animal, and he gives us so much love. He's a very happy, hopeful dog. And Hope is very important. We chose that name actually because being a rescue dog, and it was very thin, very emaciated, it had been starving and clearly beaten and abused. And so we gave him the name Hope to show that even despite its circumstances and its start in life, there's always hope. And that's a theme I'd like you to carry with you through my talk, that no matter our circumstances or things that have happened to us, our disability, our deafness, deafblindness, or any other kind of challenge we're faced with, never lose hope. Hope is what drives us to be all that God has created us to be. Now, this cane, I have it, but I don't use it all that often yet. But I do find it especially useful at night. As I mentioned, I am night blind. I do not see at night. And also to walk safely up and down stairs, because it's difficult for me to perceive the distance sometimes from where I'm standing and down to the steps, and also the edge of a step. And I also use it when we go to the gym to swim. And it helps me to find the edge of a pool and to be more independent when I'm swimming, because that's something also about people who are deaf or deafblind or have any other kind of disability. There's a tendency to lose one's independence and to be reliant on other people to communicate or to get around or to do certain things. And one really wants to try one's best to hold on to one's independence as far as possible. If I didn't have this cochlear implant or this hearing aid, all these glasses, I would be completely reliant on other people, and I'd probably be depressed, and the quality of my life would be greatly diminished. So having this cochlear implant and hearing aid and getting access to sound, and I'm a musician, I compose music. Yes, deaf people are musicians. Some people even without the devices who are completely and utterly deaf, they hear the rhythm of the music by pounding on wood and wooden floors, and they drum. Maybe try and look up some of these videos of this amazing woman who's completely deaf, but she's a incredible, internationally known drummer. And that's amazing. There was a deaf woman also who appeared on, I think it was America's Got Talent, and she's now a internationally known singer, and she is completely deaf. She doesn't even have a cochlear implant, but she just remembers how she sounded, and she's had a lot of voice training and so on. That's, for me, is a miracle. But that's another message that I want to leave with you today is, and we'll get to that a bit later, but it's that we are not, our disability does not define us. It does not define the extent of our dreams. We define our potential. We define it. We need courage to do that, but we define the extent and the quality and the reach of our dreams and of our lives. But I will unpack that a bit later. So today, what have we learned? We have learned that there are some deaf people who communicate, like me, with their voice. We have also learned that there are people who have both a hearing and a vision impairment, and we call them deafblind people. And we've also learned that within the deafblind community, there are many different and diverse ways that people communicate and manage with their dual sensory loss. Now, there is a third group within the deaf community, the deaf with a capital D. This community is referred to as being culturally deaf, part of a culture, and they tend not to see themselves as people who have a disability. The first language of culturally deaf people is sign language. There are many different sign languages that are unique from country to country, and even within a country, depending on the language and the location. In South Africa, we have South African Sign Language, but we also have different dialects of that South African Sign Language. There's even an English and Afrikaans Sign Language, and then different dialects within each of those. It can get quite complicated, but let's focus on South African Sign Language. And I'd like to teach you a few basic signs which you can use to make deaf people feel welcome and acknowledged when you meet them. And let me just also say, I'm no expert in sign language, and this is not strictly South African Sign Language, but it is some of the sign language that I picked up when I was working as a researcher at the Institute for the Deaf in Worcester. So here we go. Try it with me. Hello. Hello. How are you? How are you? My name is Tim. Tim. It's good to meet you. I learn at Parklands. Let me do Parklands. School. I'm happy. I hope you are happy also. I love you. That's the international sign language for I love you. Hope you found that fun. So as we finish our time together today, I would like to share with you a few thoughts about how I feel about being deafblind, and also, importantly, a word of encouragement to each of you. It is true that one must acknowledge what any disability does to one's quality of life. The very real impact it really does have. It's not easy. Every one of you learners knows this. Having been deaf all of my life, it's so inbred in me, deep within me, in my soul, in my being, that I actually cannot imagine my life not being deaf. However, the gradual loss of my vision is something that, obviously, I'm continuing to adapt to and to make peace with. I'm inspired by, among others, the friends that I have made and the people that I've worked with who have done some amazing, extraordinary things that have impacted people and changed lives for the better all over the world. So much so that the fact that they are deaf or deafblind is just something that they are. It's not who they are. And I want you all to remember that. The fact that you have a disability is just that, a fact. It's a part of your story. It's not your whole story. One of the great blessings that I have in being a deafblind person is that it has opened up an amazing world of opportunity and adventure that I would never have experienced otherwise. I've traveled to many countries, competed in international sport, most recently representing South Africa. I hope you can see this. Representing South Africa at the All Africa Para Triathlon Championships in Egypt. In the triathlon, as a visually impaired person, I'm a classified B3, which is a partially sighted, legally blind person, B3. That's the person also with the best vision. There's a B1 who is completely blind, B2 somewhere in between, and then the B3 is those who have 20/200 vision or worse, or reduced peripheral vision, B3. But the best of all has been the privilege to meet some truly extraordinary people, many of whom have thankfully become very good friends. Each of you at Parklands has a unique story, one that, like me, will include hardship, it will include struggle, it will include pain, it will include loss. Perhaps you will also feel fear, anxiety, even sadness at what you have lost, what you have gone through, what you have endured, what you are still going through, and what may or may not happen in the future. That is understandable. It is perfectly normal. You are normal. But I want to encourage you this morning to remember that disability does not define us. It must not influence the reach of our dreams. Each one of you has an infinite, God-given potential, and God desires us to live our very best lives. Within each of you is a precious, precious gift, a story that must be told, a voice that needs to be heard, one that will inspire and encourage so many. All you need is the courage to dream and a cheerleader by your side who believes in you. I am who I am because of the many throughout my life who have believed in me and fought for me to become all that God made me to be. Who believed in me, who helped me to believe that I could, that I had a right to dream, that my dreams that mattered, that in fact I mattered. You matter. Your dreams matter. Keep dreaming. Keep believing. Never, ever give up. Never lose hope. Hold on to your dreams. So many people believe in you. Your teachers believe in you. Your parents and your families believe in you. I believe in you. God bless you. I love you. Cheers.